Welcome to lesson 3 of chapter 14. We just learned about what pesticides are, and we're going to focus on the issues with pesticides. So learning goal here is that you will be able to describe the issues with pesticide use for humans and the environment. Learning goals, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to list 4 problems associated with pesticide use, explain why certain pesticides become biomagnified in food chains, and then explain why pesticides are continue to be used even though we have these concerns. So problems with pesticide use. A perfect pesticide would have the following characteristics. It would be inexpensive, want to save money. It would only affect target organisms, so we're not accidentally harming other things. It would have a short half-life, meaning it breaks down really quickly. And it would also break down into harmless materials, because just because it's breaking down doesn't mean that those new components are harmless. Newer pesticides have fewer drawbacks than early pesticides, but none are devoid of problems. We have not reached that point yet. So persistence, we talked about persistent and non-persistent pesticides. The persistent pesticides become attached to small soil particles that are easily moved by wind or water, which means even though you sprayed it here, it may move way over there. So they may be distributed throughout the world from local applications. And persistent pesticides have been discovered in polar ice and are present in detectable amounts in the bodies of animals, including humans, throughout the world. So even though obviously we are not getting sprayed with pesticides, and even if you wash your produce, because of the air and the water and everything, you are still consuming pesticides. So the concern in the natural world a lot of the time is going to be bioaccumulation and biomagnification. So these things relate but are not exactly the same. Bioaccumulation is the process of accumulating higher and higher amounts of material within an organism's body. It is within one organism's body. Many persistent pesticides are fat soluble, and so they build up in fat tissues. Your body holds onto fat really, really well. So if something is fat soluble, it's going to get into the fat cells and just stay there. So if you continue to consume this pesticide, which as humans, maybe we buy organic, whatever, but like if you're a fish, you don't have a choice. It builds up and builds up within that one organism. And then what happens is biomagnification. And this is the process of acquiring increasing levels of substance in bodies of higher trophic level organisms. So we have a fish that has bioaccumulated a lot of mercury, and then a bigger fish like tuna eats that fish. And so it's going to biomagnify up the food chain as the predators eat the prey. So big problems, big pesticides where this is or was a concern is DDT. Mercury and PCBs are all known to accumulate in ecosystems. DDT was then banned in the US in the early 1970s. So this is an example of biomagnification. So we have the detritus, like just the dead stuff at the bottom that the pesticides kind of settle down into. The shrimp eats it, the fish eat it, and then the bigger fish eats it. It's going to bioaccumulate up. And this is a little blurry, especially if you're looking at it on a small screen. But what we can see is there's like 0.04 in the plankton, but then 0.23 in this fish, and then 2.07 in this fish, and then 3, almost 4 in the birds. And that's a concern. Another concern is pesticide resistance. So pesticide resistance is a problem associated with the widespread use of pesticides. Insecticides only kill susceptible individuals. Most surviving individuals have characteristics that allow them to tolerate the pesticide. So if all of the weak insects are killed off and the strong insects are left, who's left to make new baby insects? It's going to be the survivors. And the same thing applies for plants too. So the survivors are passing on that genetic characteristic for tolerance. And then so the next time that pesticide is used, it's less effective because the insects or the organisms that are breeding and creating more organisms are the ones who are strong enough to resist, or they have genes that allow them to resist. We also talk about in the last lesson non-target organisms. So most pesticides are not species specific, and so they also will kill beneficial species as well as pest species, and those beneficial species would be the non-target organisms. So many kill predator and parasitic insects that normally control pest insects. So there's a natural food chain of insects eating insects. We don't want to kill the good insects that are eating the bad ones, but with insecticides or pesticides, we are doing that. Insecticides might also change the population structure of the species present so that a species that was not a problem before may become a serious pest. If you are trying to get rid of a pest and you accidentally are killing a good insect that was killing another pest that you weren't really dealing with because that big insect was eating that pest, now that other pest becomes a problem. So it's a concern. And then, of course, human health. So short-term and long-term health effects to persons applying pesticides in the public that consumes pesticide residues in food are also concerns. There can be acute poisoning during application. And the WHO estimates that between 1 million and 5 million acute pesticide poisonings occur annually, resulting in 20,000 deaths just from pesticides. For most people, the most critical health problem is inadvertent exposure to small quantities. So this could be farmers who are occupationally exposed over many years. They tend to have more, they're more susceptible to certain kinds of cancers because of this exposure. Chronic minute exposures to pesticide residues in food or through contaminated environments are also of concern. So wash your food and drink clean water. So if these are all concerns, why do we still use them? For food production, when we use pesticides, we're protecting our crops. So worldwide, pests destroy 35% of crops. So when we use pesticides, we're protecting our food. And also economic concerns. When we're protecting our food, we get more food out of our yields, and that's going to increase profits and also mean we don't have as much of a food scarcity. And then there's also health reasons, especially with insecticides, we're helping control diseases. So before you move on, can you answer these 2 questions? What is biomagnification? What problems does it cause? And how is it related to biomagnification? Oh, that should be bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation. And what problems does bioaccumulation cause? How is it related to biomagnification? And then describe how some populations of pests become resistant to pesticides. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next one.